Welcome to the Confidence in Singing podcast, where you can reclaim your voice and rediscover the joy of singing. I'm Aideen, and my guests include singers and voice experts who share their insights and journey to encourage singing for health, happiness, and fun. To support this podcast and join the Confidence in Singing community, just click on the Patreon link below. New patrons will be entered into my launch competition for a 1-hour voice coaching session. Patrons also get bonus content and access to special offers. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the podcast today. I'm Aideen from Confidence in Singing, and this is Dan Comerford. He is a guitarist, a vocalist, and also an instrument maker and a documentary filmmaker as well, right, Dan?
Almost all of those things, yeah.
Almost. Yeah, sometimes we have to get going into the things we like before we can kind of own that as an identity. You know, when you say I'm a ... it feels like you're adding... Yeah, you do. You feel like you need to earn it. And it's something that I would definitely want to talk about today because this idea of I'm a singer or I'm not a singer is something that even I struggled with. And I had been singing from the time I was a small child, and I had taken singing lessons. And at the age of 28, someone asked me, what did I want to do? And I said, I want to be a singer, but I can't do that. You know, like the brain
you
was
always
like,
can.
I had elevated the singing thing to something that was so unattainable. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Dan.
No problem.
And we let's just let everyone know how we know each other a little bit, and just to give some context. So I'm actually in Michigan right now because this is where I'm living with my husband Mike. And Dan, you're based in
County Wexford, Ireland.
Right. There you go. And that's where we met. Well, I'm from New Rossing, County Wexford. Dan and I met through Yasmin, who was a budding secret singer, and I hope she's not so much of a secret anymore. And you were her accompanist for one of my secret singer concerts, correct?
That's
Tell
true.
me a little bit about
True.
what you observed from yeah, exactly. Is there anything from what you observed of those classes and kind of that concert that you found interesting from your point of view in the accompaniment kind of role?
I thought that class was really refreshing in its confidence in singing was exactly what it aimed to be and what it was, you know. That a lot of classes like that can get too technical or not technical enough, but you focused on just developing people's confidence, and I thought that was really kind of, people claim to do it, but you actually did it. So that's a nice unique approach. Like,
yeah, that's a compliment. Thank you so much. And tell me how you began with your singing. Like, I know that you studied music eventually, but as a kid, did you consider yourself a singer, or were you naturally good at singing, or?
My first introduction to music, it was just always around. My dad plays guitar, and I was always just surrounded by all kinds of music. A lot of the stuff, the Irish stuff at that time, like there was Mary Black and stuff, which I'm not a fan of, but Sharon Shannon, the Big Geraniums, like it's a kind of a broad range of stuff, and I was always just surrounded by that. So music was always there, first of all, you know. At the age of 7 then I picked up a guitar, and I guess I never really thought about singing so much, but it was guitar until, you know, that's all I wanted to do until my teens, really. And I kind of found out at some point in my teens, I suppose my voice broke or something like that, and I realized I had a voice, you know. So I kind of started singing at that point, and always accompanying myself with guitar, and I haven't stopped, apart from the pandemic, but you know, until then I hadn't really stopped.
That's great, because I have so many times given up, you know, music for periods of time, and the fact that you have never stopped, I really admire that.
Well, that said, I have taken maybe moments where I hate this and I want to stop, and I'm I just need a break for a couple of months, and that's okay. Like this, when I was gigging a lot after college and stuff, I kind of got a little bit burnt out. So, downtime is okay.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me about your first instance of kind of singing for other people, and like, was confidence ever an issue for you singing for others?
Yes. My first gig when I was actually conscious enough to know that it was a gig, I had one gig when I was 8 years old, and I was such a kid and so full of confidence at that stage that it didn't even cross my mind that I might be nervous, But my first real gig was when I was 16. I remember it was in Finnegan's pub in Wexford Town, which is no longer there. It was an open mic night, and I got up on stage so just numb with nerves, and microphone in front of me, and I sang to my hand the whole time, holding the guitar, I still remember it just as a horrible experience. But then a couple of weeks later, I had my second gig, and that whole thing was behind me then, and that weight had lifted, and I was actually able to find the mic and sing into it, which was a major step.
So did you find it hard to believe in yourself then at that point?
I don't know if it was, probably, I was kind of a dorky, kind of unconfident teenager at that stage, so I didn't, and I the whole taking the music thing seriously and writing my own stuff was kind of unexplored. So
when was the turning point? Because I know that you studied music, you actually went to college for music as well. But when was the turning point when you thought of it as this is me, I have to do this for me, I am a musician and I'm gonna need to sing, and here I go, I'm all in?
Well, I think that came before I even thought of my first gig. I had just kind of age 14 probably, when I locked myself in my room with the guitar and was just always playing, so I'd say around that time I knew that it was going to be some kind of musical area for me,
Great. And were your family supportive?
For the most part, yeah, because they're musical themselves, but as a career path, I don't know, it's very hard for anyone to be supportive of someone aiming at music as a career path. It's great as a pastime, it's great as a hobby, but it's very difficult as a career.
So
it's hard for anyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's the same with my family. I think in Ireland as well, we're kind of drummed into the idea that you go to university and get a job, and people really value security in jobs more than the creativity or even the personal development around, working for yourself. Because that's in other countries like America, it's very much valued that you can, that you go on a journey with a business or something, and it actually teaches you something. So it has value in itself. Whereas I think job security is the bigger value in Ireland. Yeah,
I think in Ireland at the moment, self-employment, be it as a musician or as anything else, it seems to be quietly discouraged from the top down, There's less supports for the self-employed here than there should be, but that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day.
It's true, and I definitely would have a conversation with you about that, particularly if you're an artist or a creative person, because a lot of the business supports are for typical businesses, and I've kind of tried to do both in that, I've gotten a grant from the Arts Council, but I've also gotten a lot of help from the local enterprise office, which would be more for typical business owners. So I hear you on that one. But coming back, I think to... Go on.
The whole, would you ever get a real job? That kind of stuff. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, or you get the odd email from a family member going, "Hey, did you hear about this job? It's open now at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, you might want to apply." So yeah, you get that a lot. I know where you're coming from, and it does give you a little bit of a. It makes you wonder about, like, are you doing the right thing? And you know, it does dent your confidence as well when people don't believe that things are possible, because a lot more is possible than I think the average Irish person realizes.
Definitely, yeah.
When you throw yourself in.
Yeah, you kind of have to. There is a point, you know, not as a teenager, you know, where it's just all you want to do, but there's a point after that when you're maybe in your 20s and you've, you know, it's beginning to get kind of, you either choose this as a career path, or you have to decide whether it's a hobby or a side project or a career path, you know.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes a little bit later, I guess, you know, or it did for me anyway, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes to show from what I see of your work that you've done other things as well. Like, I mean, you actually make instruments now too, mainly guitars, is it?
Yeah, that's only a recent thing. That kind of started during the lockdown, late last year. Actually, I kind of it's there. You can kind of see it, but yeah, there. That's my first guitar I ever made last year. But I decided, you know, that it was always something I wanted to try, and it was something I'd been doing, kind of just dismantling guitars and modifying them and stuff, and I just said, and I'd been getting into bits of woodwork otherwise as well, so I decided, it's, you know, how hard could it be? It turns out very, but not so hard that you can't do it. So I did it, and I was like, you know what, it's really good for my head, and it's really enjoyable. So yeah, so now I've a few orders on, and I've a few sales done, and yeah, building a workshop out the back next month, and yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Really happy to hear you're doing that.
Cheers. I'm just going to dive into it and see what happens, because why not? You know, I really want to do this, so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same. Like, I just like try to, you know, throw everything at the thing that I really want until it works, rather than asking myself, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? I'm like, what else do I need to throw at this problem? You know, and I think we've something in common there, that we both want to work in music, or do something with music. And like, I'm teaching now you're making instruments. So it's like expanding that expectation that I'm a guitarist and I'm going to be on a stage, or I'm a singer and I'm going to be on a stage, to having a broader kind of career in music.
Yeah, like I think, all my little things in life have been based around music. Like, I studied as a sound engineer as well, and I work as a live sound engineer. So it's all music based, but I don't have to depend on being a successful and sustainable performer. I have all these little things that kind of tie in and allow me to make a living, you know, and I don't have to depend on any one of them. So
that's really good.
Yeah, I think I can't imagine myself in an office job or anything like that. I can't imagine it. So I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm in the right area. I just have to figure out the one that's sustainable.
Yeah, or a combination of a couple that becomes sustainable overall.
Yeah. I thought the sound engineering thing was going to be a laster, but then sure, the pandemic hit, and I haven't done sound at a gig for about a year now. So, you know, things change.
Miss it?
I do. Yeah, you know, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't. But yeah, I there's nothing like, well, any audience, whether you're on the stage or if you're in the sound booth, there's nothing like a live gig. So yeah, I do miss it from all angles. I do.
Yeah, and it's it's the team kind of thing where you're, you know, working with somebody and you're making them sound good. Like when you're on stage, it's the same with me with my teaching. You know, when I get someone sounding good, it's like this really nice feeling, isn't it?
There's just a connection between two people. You'll have it 1-to-1. I'll have it with a bit of electronics in the middle, but it's the same thing, you know. I just love getting all these musicians in the door and just working with all these different people, and it's a lot of fun. I really do love it, and it took me a long time after studying it to get to that point where I really did love it, you know.
Why did it take you so long to find that love, do you think?
Well, it took me that long to find a steady job in it. I think that was one of the main things. But after college, you know, I had all this information, you know, all this stuff about sound engineering, and it was all just rattling around in there. And one day it just kind of settled, and I finally understood it, you know. And from that point on, I began to enjoy it a little bit more. Just, you know, that click that you get when you're trying to learn something, and it took a while, but I got there, you know.
Yeah, it's a good point as well about learning, because anything that's got lots of complicated parts takes a while to learn. I always say singing is like juggling, because you have to learn the lyrics and the melodies, and people who haven't had a musical background actually have a lot of work to put in, and just in a playful and fun way, but they have a lot of work to put in just to learn a melody. Whereas someone like yourself, who's been singing since you were 4 or 5, will pick up a song a lot faster. You'll still apply yourself to learning it, but it will be so much faster because of all that background you have with it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I remember when I went to college after and studied music performance, and I remember that the vocal coach there was very good, but I was going in as a self-taught singer, you know, and terrible technique, as I found out later on, you know. But going through all these classes, learning about tilt and just supporting my voice properly and getting rid of some of my bad habits, and it took a couple of years of that course to just kind of grind down a few, and I really applied myself to that. Like, that was, I dived headlong into the vocal part of that course, and I just had to weed out some bad habits, and I just learned to feel in my own voice a lot more than I had before. Even though I'd been gigging and I'd been singing for years, I just learned so much more about myself as a vocalist in that time. And even though I don't really rehearse at the moment, again, that's a bad habit in its own, but I find those proper techniques that I learned in those classes have really stuck with me, you know.
Yeah.
And I never regressed back into the bad habits, which was brilliant. I was delighted with that.
That's really good. Yeah, and I think a lot of people who have never taken a singing lesson, they don't realise how much better a few tips and techniques that generally take time to actually absorb, but when you understand what you're doing that's right, and when you understand what you're doing that isn't working, it can really change things for you, right?
And if you have someone standing in front of you in a class then who can tell you exactly at that point, it's like that was right, you did it the right way, or, you know, you did it a way, there's no real right or wrong way, but there's kind of ways that are, you know, you can easily injure your voice or something like that by just singing the wrong way over years and years, and bad habits can lead to injuries down the way. So, you know, someone to point out those little things like this, some of them can be really technical and a little bit kind of take a little bit longer to sink in, and others it could be just one sentence. It's like, you do this, but you shouldn't do this. For me, I was very breathy. There was a lot of hiss and there was a lot of breathiness, which when it was pointed out to me, and I was kind of taught how to get rid of that, it became very easy just to get rid of that one thing. And over time then I was able to kind of, what I thought I had lost from the breathiness, I was able to get from other areas of singing, you know.
Yeah, the way that I talk about it in my classes is about choices, you know. Mike, when we're doing some of the electronic pop that we do, he likes the breathy sound, so I'm singing with a breathier sound for that than I would in other kinds of types of songs. But when you understand how to put it in and how to take it back out again, then you really do have choices in how you sound. Yeah,
and then on a technical end of things, like as a sound engineer, you can bring out that in someone's voice. If that is, for myself anyway, I still avoid it when I'm recording, but I can bring it out in the mixing stage a little bit, you know, with just
Perfect.
bits of compression and an EQ, and you can just put a little bit of air into stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. And I think a lot of people who do record themselves don't realize how much magic you can actually use in the mixing, and, you know, different plugins and, you know, different types of effects that could be
and it's
enhanced.
so accessible now. Yeah, it's so accessible now. You can, if you have a laptop, you can pick up a mic and an interface for maybe £100, I don't know, and you can get recording yourself at home, and it's brilliant. You know, from when I started, I got into that about 14 years ago, I think, and the technology was still, it's pretty new. You know, it was still a transition from tape to digital, and it was just kind of finding its feet a little bit. And now, compared to then, it's just, you basically have a studio in your pocket in your mobile phone, you know. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
It really is. I mean, yeah, sure, we all remember the days of like recording things like songs onto your tape with the cassette recorder, and
then doing a harmony, but you do a harmony then by playing the tape into another tape recorder, and
oh my goodness, you were mixing before you even, I didn't do any of that kind of fancy stuff now, so that shows you now how early you started mixing.
God, yeah, that was like, when I was only a kid, like, I remember my dad showing me that one. We had the stereo, the house stereo, and we had my sister's kind of ghetto blaster, as she called it, you know. Yeah. And was able to record into one and play it back on the other, and then sing a harmony into it. And it was you were layering. I forgot about that, actually. That was cool.
That's really fun to remember, and it just goes to show how you know, far back that interest goes with you, which is lovely that you know what I mean. Like, sometimes when you're not doing the thing that you love, like say your sound engineering, you can feel a little bit like you lose a part of your identity as that. Like, but if you were doing that from the time you were a young boy, that just says, you know, that it's just a part of you, you know. And whether you're doing a lot in it right now, or whether the pandemic is affecting your ability to work at it or not, it's still a passion.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that'll always be there, you know. I hadn't actually realised how, I thought the tape thing was just a thing I did, but I hadn't really thought about it in a sound engineering point of view. So that's an interesting angle.
Now when people ask you how long have you been doing sound engineering, you can say,
since it was 6 or 7, you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. It'll look good on your resume and your bio. I started mixing when I was 7. So do you find that you have difficulties with your confidence in other areas now? Like, is it, you conquered the confidence part with your own singing because you just loved it so much that you kept applying yourself? That's what it sounds like to me. Am I right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I never would have said it like that, but I think you're probably right. Yeah, I never shied away from just putting myself in the performance situation, or any situation where I might have to do something where I'm dependent on for doing something. And I never shied away from that, and I would have always learned from that then, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and
I think
passion.
If you're in those if you're in those situations as well, like my first gig, sang to my hand, terrified, like, I cannot stress how terrified I really was, like. But then a couple of weeks later, playing another gig, and whatever happened, I must have learned something from that first one, and I was less terrified. And, you know, I had done it once, and that was a huge thing, and I knew how to do it, more or less, you know. So it was much better the second time. So it was that quick, you know.
That's really great.
I think that happens with everything. I remember my first gig as a sound engineer as well. Terrified, not to the same degree, of course, but because it was darker and no one was looking at me. But you know, still terrified, and just kind of probably just blagging my way through it a little bit. You know, just a bit of a chancer. But and when that worked out, the next gig was actually easier as well. So it seems to be a pattern with how I just dive into things and see how they go.
I definitely like that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd advise anyone to do that. Like in your singing class, I think maybe I'm wrong, but it's about getting people to allow themselves to do that as much as it is about singing. You know, it's to people allowing themselves to sing in some ways. Like,
Yeah, it's like you're not holding yourself up to some level of perfection or a standard of performance necessarily in your first try.
Yeah.
It's more that if I do it at all, I've succeeded.
yeah, if you do it once, then you know the next time you might enjoy the second time. You know,
Yeah.
no one ever enjoys the first time.
We have so many stages to learning, so I think a lot of people are so afraid to take the first steps that they don't take any steps. And I definitely ask people to, to record themselves even on their phone, to try that, as a starting point, which you obviously had been doing for a long time. But even doing that much can be terrifying to some people, and it's
Definitely,
all just about. Don't worry about how good it is, but just the fact that you did it is a really positive thing, and you learn from doing the thing.
Yeah, I also remember the first time when I was learning about the sound thing, and I picked up some equipment and started recording myself at home. And I remember the first time really listening to, the mics are so detailed. First time listening back to my own voice, really listening back to my own voice. It never sounds like you think it sounds. It was kind of horrible, but you get used to it after a while, and you just realize that that's how you sound, and it's okay. But it's definitely off-putting the first time you hear yourself recorded back. Totally
100%. I mean, I wanted to sound like Ella Fitzgerald or someone. I studied jazz music, and I think I was singing every song at least a third or a fourth lower than was natural for my range. And I had to admit over time that my sweet spot in my voice was just a kind of a slightly sweeter kind of higher than that voice of the typical jazz singer. And that's, you have your instrument, that's what you work with, and you can improve it, and you can do a lot with your instrument once you accept this is how I am today, and then work with that rather than trying to work against it.
Yeah, exactly. In college, I was the guy with the low voice, and I used to kind of challenge myself to sing lower and lower and lower, and it's kind of like a fun trick almost, and that's how I think of it now. It's just a trick, and it was okay, but I'm less of a bass, more of a baritone, I think. But yeah, it was any recordings that my college mates were doing. It's like, Dan, will you put a low vocal on this? I kind of got tired of that after a while and just started singing the way I naturally would,
Yeah, not trying to fit yourself into somebody else's idea,
exactly,
but allowing.
I have my voice, and I'll just sing that way.
Yeah, exactly. And for a lot of people, and some people listening might not know much about music theory or anything like that. And I think that from that perspective of knowing where your sweet spot in your voice is, sometimes the song needs to be changed, as in the backing track needs to be higher or lower, and we call that in a different key, and if you're not musical or you haven't got that musical background, the reason you're not sounding the way you want to sound can be simply because the song isn't at the right level for you or in the right key for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that can be. That's why, I always accompanied myself with the guitar, and that's where the capo really came into its own. You can just change the pitch of the guitar in a second, But if someone's playing to a backing track, it becomes more difficult. I don't know what way backing tracks are now. If you can download them in all sorts of different keys, you probably can. It's all MIDI, I suppose. So it's probably easy enough to do that.
There are a few websites where you can bring it up or down. Only usually about a tone or two maybe. Yeah. Because they do start to distort at a certain point. So but let's go on.
I don't know if I had a point there.
You've had some brilliant points already, so but I do have a couple of extra questions. I want to ask you a couple more questions before.
Oh no.
Well, at least you've something to say, Dan. You weren't sure you were going to have that much to say. now
I do get nervous with podcast. Any kind of video chat I do get kind of very self-conscious with, but no, I wasn't self-conscious up until this very moment. Actually, now I'm feeling self-conscious again.
I shouldn't have mentioned it. Okay, no. Well, I do want to ask you, what would you say to someone who's starting out, kind of that hasn't really done any performance and they're just starting with their singing or their performing, or even songwriters? You know that can be another big step where you start writing. What would you say to someone who's just beginning?
I think, start at the start. Don't, you can only, you can't start anywhere else. You have to start at, there has to be a first time you try something. So start there and don't try and start halfway up the ladder, because it's just, you'll meet a wall and you won't want to do it anymore. Just start singing in the shower, singing in your room, whatever, if you have a space where you just enjoy singing to yourself or something like that, just sing, and don't worry about how anything sounds or who can hear it or anything. Just start there, and then if you enjoy doing it, do it more. If you feel you want to gig sometime, maybe make it an annual plan, at some point, a New Year's resolution, sometime this year I will play my first gig or something like that, and just one step at a time, I think, because if you're skipping 2 or 3 steps, you might be out of your depth at any moment, and that's no good. It might take the love of it away.
Yeah, and that can happen actually when you study music. I found that in college you get a bit overwhelmed because you're trying to see all these steps ahead of you, but there is a point where you're at 0, so your first step is knowing you're at 0, and you'll get to step number 1 by being at 0.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone starts at at nothing. The first time I picked up a guitar was the first time I picked up a guitar, and I started at that point and I worked from there. First time I sang my head off was, I started there as well, and finally figured out that I could do it to the point where I wanted to gig it, and baby steps. Baby steps,
I love that. That's really important. And a lot of adults, when we start something new as an adult, we put ourselves under these terrible pressures to...
Yeah, definitely, where, you think, oh, I'm 33 now, I should be a famous singer already, and no, just sing. Like, that's all any of us do. We just sing.
Yeah. That's really good. Do you think there's a value to singing beyond just sounding better as a singer?
You can look at this from all kinds of angles. Like, if you look at the cultural merits of singing, in Ireland especially, that it's ingrained in culture. It's just a way of storytelling, so from that aspect, huge merit in singing, a huge value in singing, entertainment value for people, and just which is, again, that's that other step if you're performing, and it's just good for your head, if you can concentrate on that. It might, you might stop concentrating on other stuff if that's what you need to do, so
like a focus.
It might take your focus away from other stuff, or what would you call it? Kind of a, I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Is it like it's like a distraction, or
a distraction? Yeah.
Yeah, it can start off as that. I think we think. For me, I feel that I'm always trying to get people to understand the value of doing singing for themselves, because a lot of people see only value in being the entertainer, when there's actually a lot of value to even singing it to yourself in the shower. Is, like you said, it's good for your head, and it could be good for you physically as well.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing it properly, I suppose. Yeah.
But just even breathing, like when you sing, you actually get more oxygen into your brain. So I would see that as a big positive. Yeah. Sometimes there's value that we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's good. But you kind of have to ask, like, why. Yeah, if someone comes to you and says, I want to sing, you know, you have to kind of ask that person maybe why. What is it about singing that you want to do? What is it that you like about singing? Mm-hmm. There's the value in it right there. The answer to that question is that person's value in their singing, like, so.
Yeah.
Or something
and
like
I think
that.
Sometimes it's hard to articulate why you want to do it. I remember being asked why did I like singing so much, and I was like, you know, I asked the guy, why do you like soccer so much? You know, it's like, you know, you don't think about why you like it, but you just like it, don't you?
Yeah, passions go kind of deeper than that. It's kind of goes beyond explaining or beyond being able to put words on, you know.
Yeah, that's really, I think that's there's something deep in that. I think you could talk more about that, and you'd find there's even from that idea of the culture and our identity as a nation, or you know, our understanding of ourselves as a person, and who are you? What's the story that you would like to tell? Why do you want to tell that story? Why does that matter to you? What's it hitting off from your life that, you know, that makes it important? And what, you know, how can you translate what you feel in that song for someone else, where it becomes a communication and almost a form of transmutation or healing of that thing. You know, it becomes a way of handling.
And that could be something that any particular person might want to express to someone else, or it could be just for themselves, you know, and either or, both of them are equally valid ideas or reasons for getting into singing, you know.
Dan, tell me about the different projects that you're involved in right now, and like what your passion, your creativity is being channeled into in the last while.
I play with two bands at the moment, backing vocals and guitars. Frankenstein Bolts are one of them. We're a dream pop indie band, a couple of albums out, another album on the way. And I'm with Kirsten Murphy versus the Resistance, which is a spoken word punk something. It's a mad bag of bats. It's brilliant, but I do a bit of backing vocals in that as well, and guitar. And on the side, I do some video production and I build instruments.
Fantastic. And are you writing any songs yourself at the moment?
At the moment, I'm not. No, that's a habit I really got out of, and I would like to again, but I'm not putting myself under any pressure to do it, you know. Mm-hmm. Like my main one of my main jobs in the bands is that I'm more of a composer than a writer. So for Kirsten Murphy versus the Resistance, for instance, I would write the majority of the music, and Peter would write all the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of shifted my focus from being a lead singer and a lead writer into a collaborator, I guess. Which I think
and does
I'm
that
more
suit
comfortable
you?
in. It does, yeah, it really does at the moment. I always enjoyed being a lead singer, but I was always kind of a little bit more reluctant to put myself out there as a face of something, you know. I really enjoy being maybe the second in the band or something like that, where I get to be very creative, but I don't have that lead singer thing where everyone's looking at me.
You know, it's a different kind of pressure as well, and I think you've more scope for your creativity, like you said, a little bit in the background, because you're not thinking about how it's going to be perceived necessarily. It's a little bit more of a, you know, you've a little bit more of a wider kind of scope to explore in that role.
I think I work better in that regard than I ever did as a lead singer anyway, even though I love singing as well, but backing vocals and guitar and actually writing some pieces and doing arrangements and all. It's strange that I never really thought of any of that when I was growing up, but I've kind of landed at this point now and I love it, so I wouldn't change it.
There you go. Yeah. And, sometimes we see, the lead singer is the number one or most important element of a band. A lot of people will know Bono before they'll know the names of the rest of the band. But in fact, the actual key people in the band might not be the lead singer. They can be the person on drums, or they can be the producer sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Can be a crucial part of the success of any group. So, even though in modern culture we have a first, second, third, and first is considered the best and second is considered the next best, it actually isn't like that. We have first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and they can all be the best at what they do in slightly different ways.
Of course, you'd never say that to a lead singer, though.
No, because they
always
hurt.
tell them that they're the best. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, I'd like to work with you then. I can be the lead singer. If you're going to
no problem, yeah.
Work with my ego like that, I'll definitely enjoy it. Yeah. Fantastic. Right. Well, look, thank you so much for joining me today for the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the conversation took nice little turns there that I don't think either of us knew exactly where it was going to go. But I really enjoyed where it went. And I hope that listeners will start to understand the idea of, getting, like you said, jumping in and trying the thing. Start from where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. Just try it,
Yeah. 100%. I love that. So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you all for listening, and we will I'll put all of Daniel's details are going to be accompanying the podcast, of course, so please do look up Frankenstein Bolts and Cursed Murphy versus the Resistance. And Dan has his first ever documentary film on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
What's
the
that
Hands
called?
Of Frankie Machine. The Hands of Frankie Machine.
Fantastic, and I'll put some links in the information, accompanying the videos and the podcast as well, so that everybody can find out a little bit more about what you do, and we'll hopefully get those projects out there a bit more and get more eyes on them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
you're welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Oh God, I really appreciate you for your. It's been fantastic. Look forward to talking to you again and watching. I'm watching this space now, Dan, to see what you do next. So that's it for today. I'll sign off now. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye.